Inspirational Creatives, episode 269.
I used to have to invest £1 million in CapEx to be able to create an infrastructure that you can now get something that's 10 times better for $5 a month on an app in your pocket. There has never been a better time in human history to basically go out and add value to the world.
Welcome to Inspirational Creatives. I'm your host, Rob Lawrence. Join me every Friday as I chat with successful artists, producers, and creative entrepreneurs who share powerful stories and strategies. They can help you to create the life that you want. Listen each week as these inspirational creatives show you how to take your creativity to the next level. You'll learn how to create a sustainable business that inspires others and gives you the financial freedom and lifestyle that you want. Thanks for listening. Make sure you sign up at inspirationalcreatives.com to get free exclusive bonus material. And now, on with the show. Rob here, and welcome to another episode of Inspirational Creatives. My guest today is a world-class speaker, a serial entrepreneur and a best-selling author who's been named as one of the greatest leaders and entrepreneurs alongside Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson and Mark Zuckerberg. He's an accomplished athlete, skydiver, diver, honorary black belt, and has climbed some of the world's highest peaks, as well as being well known for having created 20 businesses in 15 different industries. As a sought-after expert in human behaviour, a dedicated philanthropist, and an authority when it comes to human psychology, philosophy and creative entrepreneurship, and with a new book out that is transforming some of the UK's most violent prisons, called The Inside Track, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Peter Sage. Peter, a very warm welcome.
Rob, absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Delighted to have you on the show. So in the podcasting circles that I swim in, you're a highly respected guest, often referred to as one of the most inspirational. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show today. You've been named as one of the greatest leaders and entrepreneurs in the world. And I'd love to know, just to set the scene really, what that means to you.
I would say that it means that I need to keep my ego in check, keep my feet off the ground, and keep making sure that I'm on track. I mean, the reflection of other people's opinions is something I try not to tie myself to, because again, it can either lead you down a path of defend and attack if you don't like the opinions, or it can lead you down a path of self-grandialization, which is never really conducive to personal growth. So while I'm very honored and humbled to have some of the accolades that are thrown at me here, I see it only as kind of the white line in the middle of the road that keeps me focused on knowing that I'm kind of heading in the right direction.
So for our listener who may not know you yet, how would you see yourself in the world today?
Well, to begin with, and I kind of outline this at a lot of the talks that I do around the world, because when we hear introductions like that, we tend to put people on a pedestal or disassociate from them. And the biggest challenge there, Rob, is that once you put somebody on a pedestal, by definition, you minimize your own greatness by contrast. So, how I see myself is, I say to a lot of people, I'm just a guy. I'm just a normal kid who grew up on a council estate, dropped out of school at 16, and has made some choices that have been painful learning lessons, and some choices that have been turned out to be great. And I'm just you, but on this side of the microphone. Mm-hmm. And if I have any kind of sense of purpose or mission around the identity of that, it's really just to hold up a mirror to other people to show them their own greatness. Because a lot of the time that mirror gets foggy, and it's always nice to have somebody to try to wipe it a little and help raise the global consciousness of humanity. That's really why I'm here.
What would you say have been some of the biggest turning points in your life?
Well, I think that two of the main demarcations along the journey of emotional maturity for a human being tend to be, the first one is when you finally become okay not being liked. And there's so many people that are running around in life looking for a place to reattach their umbilical cord, because they're so desperately seeking approval, connection, validation, and acceptance, because they either didn't get it or don't feel validated enough, or are dealing with the primary fear that most of us have, which is the fear that we're not enough. And so once you finally become okay with the fact that you're not always going to be liked, then you can start living authentically, rather than this kind of adaptation machine that's trying to fit the approval strategies of what you think will qualify you to be friends with everybody else or not upset them. And so, that's the first, sort of major point. And for me, that really happened early on. I was very lucky to get out of what I call swimming in goop, GOOP, the good opinion of other people. And once you learn how to get out of that, you achieve social freedom, and you can show up without all of that baggage and energy that's invested in trying to prove to the world that you're right at the expense of everybody else being wrong and all of that stuff. You get to a point where there's nothing to attack, nothing to defend, and nothing to prove. You just show up. And that's a big learning point. I think another aspect of the sort of journey there as well, is certainly a big one for me, that happened in my late 20s, was when I finally realized that life was a growth-centric experience, not a comfort-centric experience. And most of us spend our entire lives trying to design ourselves into a comfort zone, which life itself is very busily trying to get you out of to maximize your potential. And so when you give up the fight of that and you embrace the adversity that life brings as a workout from the position of an athlete doing a workout, not every day is going to be a tough day. But if you're looking to complain at the workouts or bitch about your personal trainer, whatever label you want to put on, the higher level of intelligence that created this, this game, then you're always going to be upset. You're always going to be looking for the hole in the donut. You're going to be hiding behind the treadmill, hoping the personal trainer doesn't find you and force you to run when he cares so much about you that he wants you to win the marathon. You get the idea?
I do. I'd love to know, with both of those turning points for you, was there a moment where you just saw things from a completely different perspective, or are these ideas that have evolved over time?
Both. I think sometimes we can be lucky enough to have a hard enough slap that it really gets our attention and we start taking notice of things we probably should have been taking notice long before. For other times, it's a drip feed. It's a gradual baking of the cake in the oven. And you finally come to a mature level of awareness where, it all kind of starts to make sense. But so it's really a combination of that, depending on our own individual and unique journeys as we sail down the river of life.
Amazing. I'd love to talk to you briefly about your new book, The Inside Track, and why that's important in the world today. So let me ask you that question first. What's the book about, and why do you believe it's important in the world today?
Well, I mean, the book was never meant to be a book. It's actually the collection of the 11 private letters that I wrote to my senior coaching students while I was in jail. And I never saw that coming. Talk about bends in the river of life. It's actually arguing a business deal, as most people could do these days in court. It was a civil action. I bought $12.5 million worth of goods from a big multinational and sold it for a very small margin, paid in full, many, many years before. And several years later, they show up at my door with a freezing order and a bee in their bonnet, and couldn't name one term or condition on any contract that I'd breached, other than saying, well, look, give us a load of money and we'll make it all go away. Of course, I kicked back against that in my naivety, trying to prove that I was right. And they threw a contempt of court application at me, which I thought was just a chess move. I didn't really give it much credence. In business today, unfortunately, litigation is a fact of life, and it's nothing more than a tool. It's not about who's right or wrong. If you think that, you're in Disneyland. It's about who can position themselves better in the game. So, I thought that it was just a move on the chessboard, and I showed up to court, and they sold it to the judge, and he gave me, essentially a 6-month. I got 18 months to start with, which as a civil prisoner, as a non-criminal here, this is non-criminal procedures. I do half, and we appealed, and they dropped it to 12 months. So I ended up serving 6 months, but not in a typical open prison where, as a civil prisoner, I should have gone. But I spent several months in Pentonville, which is, as you probably know, one of the toughest prisons in the UK. And I'm a great believer, Rob, that arguing against what's already happened or wasting energy trying to change what's already happened is futile. So many people resist what already is, and it's a complete waste of energy. Getting to a point of acceptance of where you're already at allows you to free up that energy and channel it into making some better decisions on how to deal with what's already happened. If you may not like the milk's just spilt on your new carpet, but sitting there and complaining and bitching about it and turning it into a victim story isn't going to help get it back in the bottle or clean the carpet up. I remember just before when it was looking bad in court, and my girl turned around to me and she said, this isn't going the way we thought it would go. And I'm like, no, and I'd made zero provisions. Not in my wildest, dreams would I ever see a situation walking into court where I wouldn't be walking out, but walking down the stairs. And I'd got 53 staff. I'd got business. I'd got a big seminar I was running a couple of weeks later that we just sold, a bunch of tickets to at $1,000 each, I'd created zero redundancy around that. So, I lost pretty much everything. And when that looked like it was going to be the case, I turned around to her and I said, "Look, if that happens, then we've got to look at a bigger reason here, honey." I said, I'm very blessed that over the last 20 odd years, millions of people around the world have benefited from my work. Whether it's my seminars, my teachings, my books, my online stuff, but maybe the real people that could benefit the most never get access to that because they're in somewhere like Pentonville, for example. So, if the universe has got bigger plans and wants me to go and do my work in a different place where I can really help people, hey, let me go do it. And I went in with the identity, not of a prisoner, but of a secret agent of positive change. And that was really what I saw my mission as. And I went to work and really these letters were invitations to my coaching clients and kind of a how-to manual on what I was doing to change the system and help people and get them off drugs and stop suicides and see how I could fix what was clearly a broken prison system. And it was really a part journal, part how-to manual, and part you couldn't make it up, but it was true. And as a result, when I came out, they said, "Wow, we've learned more in these 11 letters in the last 6 months than following you around the world for the last 2 years on stake. You've got to publish them." And I'm like, well, it was never meant for the public. This is some pretty advanced stuff in here. And I never wrote it with that tone of writing. It's like a conversational letter to my friends, as it were, my clients. But, I thought that it could probably help people. And, they agreed. I agreed to publish. And last year we released the book, which is just the 11 letters. And the journey of the whole thing on how it unfolded inside, which is honestly it's mind-blowing stuff. And very privileged and humbled. It went bestseller in 2 hours. I think it went Amazon #1 in 4 hours. I think we sold to 25 countries on the first day, and since then it's pretty much changed the lives of everybody that's read it. I say very, very blessed as to that. That's just one of the amazing gifts that came out of one of the best adventures I'd ever had.
That's incredible. So that's the inside track for our listener looking for that book right now. That time in prison, what would you say one of the biggest lessons or insights you gained personally from that experience?
Oh, wow, there's so much. I mean, clearly I had some lessons to learn about my ego in court. I went into court not with any agenda of trying to explain to the court from a place of contrition where any misrepresentation had arisen from, any breaching of a freezing order, which is what their original allegations were. And I'm like, I've not stepped out of line here. Let me just explain how they've misperceived and how they've constructed a fallacious argument. And so I went in a little angry at what the other side were doing. And that came across as arrogance, I think, rather than contrition. And I think that's why the judge took such a hard tone. So, that was a big lesson for me. It was a big lesson inside, big realization that people can so easily go from, sitting down, having dinner 1 minute to ending up in a place like jail. And I don't just mean myself on civil action, just some of the people there it was just a horror story of bad luck. Bad decisions that you or I would have probably made in the same situations, and boom, next minute they're in a completely different world. So there was a lot of empathy, there was a lot of compassion that I built up for the people that probably previously I would have judged from a slightly harsher perspective or shallow perspective. That was definitely some good lessons and realizations, and the ability to know that no matter what happens, it's never about the situation. It's about what you do with it, and to be able to find the good in anything, to be able to find the good in losing everything and being saddled with hundreds of thousands in legal debt and losing your business and being ripped away from everything you cared about and being thrust into one of the most violent prisons on the planet, but still being able to have a smile, still being able to practice what I preach in a way that helped other people and see the results of that. And it was fun. I there was some very tough times. In the third letter, I talk about the times I cried and the times it was hard. But generally speaking, Rob, I had a blast. In fact, it was funny because I'd walk down the wings on the small amount of times a day that I was allowed out. And the guards are kind of cottoned on. I mean, they knew, my attitude, and most of them were saying, I was a guy they called Mr. Tom. I said, "Hey, Mr. Sage, how are you doing today?" And the stock response, everybody knew. It was like, "Well, living the dream." Yeah, and people had burst out laughing, which was a very rare sound that you would hear in somewhere like Pentonville. And I had two tunes that I would whistle, constantly, and people would know it was me because they'd hear the whistle. And one was "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life," by Monty Python, and the other was "The Great Escape," just because it was fun.
Yeah.
I created the best of what I could in the environment that was essentially unforgiving, and tried to help as many people as I could. So, there was a lot to learn. There really was.
Without spoiling too much of the story that's in the book, what was the key for you to bouncing back out of that experience?
Tony Robbins, who I'm very privileged to have worked with for many, many years. In fact, 2002, I became Tony's youngest official trainer. And Tony says a powerful quote that I wholeheartedly believed in and was able to demonstrate the power of while I was inside as one of the biggest lessons. He says, "Power moves to those in direct proportion to their willingness to serve." And if I'd have gone in there and focused on myself and what was wrong with my life and all of the stuff that was unjust and all of the things as to why I shouldn't be there, and essentially, again, turned it into kind of a victim sob story that would have elicited emotions of frustration, anger, resentment, kickback, resistance, I wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. Instead, I put, as soon as I walked in, I put a zero tolerance policy on any self-talk that questioned, well, if only I'd done this, or if it had gone that way, what would have happened? Forget that. That's a waste of energy. You can't change anything that's already happened. Instead, I knew I was there for a mission. I knew I would be looked after from a higher level of intelligence, and that the river was smarter than I was. And I was there to help. And so, as a result, I mean, I got a lot of the prisoners off drugs. I stopped suicides. I won a national award for the work that I did aimed at being able to reduce violence and help people. I shifted the intake procedure for a lot of the new prisoners, which is now being implemented in prisons across the UK and soon to be Australia. And just very grateful for the fact that I was focused on being able to look at something that was more than just me. And I think that was the key thing.
Yeah. That subtle shift from not tolerating any negative self-talk to having confident, positive self-talk. Did you have affirmations, or what enabled you to essentially rechannel your neural pathways so that you were unable to tolerate negative self-talk?
Well, to begin with, 25 years of committed to being in personal growth. So I'd done my 10,000 hours and then some. So if I couldn't apply that, what right did I have to even open my mouth in front of my students? This was what I call a graduation event in Earth School. So for me, it was a way to be able to demonstrate to actually apply this, and I relished that. I'm like, there's no cameras in here, there's no second takes, there's no scripts. I just missed an attempted murder, within literally seconds at one point, after being there for 10 days. 3 deaths in 1 week was the worst week I was there. This was a real environment. This wasn't a drill. And so to be able to apply my stuff there was a great challenge that I relished, because normally, where else would I have the opportunity to test out the stuff that I've been teaching people and show them that, hey, if you can do it in a place where somebody's going to walk up with a knife and threaten you, having been convicted for multiple murders already, then you can certainly do it when your boss argues with you about why you can't have a vacation. So it was a good way to really demonstrate to my students that this is real world stuff. We don't talk theory. I don't care about theory. The world's got too many philosophers and not enough people that apply what it is that they learn in a way that makes a real result to add value to the world. So that was a really good way to keep that in mind, and really just, I say, knowing that theory doesn't cover the price of admission to the higher levels of greatness. You can talk a good game, but at some point an exam's coming in school. That's the bottom line. You can sit around and talk to your mates about how great you'd be on the pitch, but at some point when the ref blows the whistle and you're standing there with your soccer boots on, it's game time. You're going to find out. For me, that was one part of it. And yes, I pulled every tool I had out of the bag. I had to. And affirmations was one of that. And part of that is underlying key beliefs. There's some foundational beliefs. One of the ones which I highlight in the book, because I outline in the book all of the different aspects of the tools that I was using and how and why. One of them stems to Einstein's, one of his most famous questions. He said, the most important question a person could ever ask in their lifetime is, do they live in a friendly or hostile universe? Because that's a binary equation right there. You've got one of two paths that you can pick. If you think that you live in a hostile universe, the typical materialism-based Darwinian mentality of survival of the fittest, you are going to look at life through a fear-based lens, because everything out there is separate and it's got an agenda that doesn't have your best interest at heart. Everything with teeth can kill you. And that is a very destructive pathway of how to live your life. Whereas if you think like I do, that the universe, it conspires in your favor. I'm an inverse paranoid. I believe that the entire game is set up to, in a secret, hidden conspiracy to make me happy and successful. And with that belief, I engage in life in a different way. I walk down the wings with an air of serenity, not an air of fear. Now that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because now I'm not targeted out as a victim.
I love it. I love the analogy you just kindly shared with us just then. With that in mind, your approach here, the one that you took while you were in prison, are there similarities to the approach that you take to the physical stuff that you do as an athlete?
Oh, absolutely. Your outer world follows your inner world. Case closed. If you've got chaos in the outer world right now, check your thinking. Because the outer world is a lagging indicator of what, how we're broadcasting on our, emotional and energetic states. That's been demonstrated pretty much in every top level quantum physics lab on the planet now, and it's unarguable. It could be disagreed with through ignorance and lack of self-education. But if you believe that your outer world is separate from your inner world, then go do your studies. So for me, how I approach the outer world, like for example, this morning, I'm up early. I have a morning routine, which involves journaling and meditation and self-learning, and then I hit the gym. And I'm a great believer that how you do anything is how you do everything. When I go in the gym, I'm there to train. I'm not there to watch some stupid program to distract me because I don't want to be on a treadmill. I'm not there mindlessly to some iPod that because I don't want to engage with people or focus on the pain of the muscles. No, if you're going to train. When I walk into a gym, the warrior shows up. You don't want the lover on the treadmill. You don't want the lover on the leg press when it's you're burning rep number 9. So the workout is won or lost before you step into the gym based upon the identity you carry in with and the intention you're committed to. So how things translate into the outer world, I practice what I preach, or as best as I can, and then when I screw up, I try to learn from that and make adjustments.
Yeah, that's great. I'd like to shift gears just slightly, and I'd talk about your experience as an entrepreneur and as a business person, living life on your own terms in many respects. In your experience, what's been the reality of that experience like for you? I mean, there's a lot of glamour that surrounds entrepreneurship these days. I'd love to know from your point of view what have been some of the biggest challenges and also some of the greatest rewards for you in your experience so far.
Great question. I mean, I am what you would term 1,000% unemployable. The last paycheck I had, I think I was 16, 17. And that was 30 years ago this year. I have no problems with outlining what I believe people should be listening to here, which is what is the number one key characteristic or skill set that you can develop as an entrepreneur. And it's not your sales, your marketing ability. It's not your ability to listen to customers. All of that is tools of the trade per se. But the foundational tool that you want to master is the ability to handle uncertainty. Now, when you build that muscle, you've got a whole different game in place.
That's awesome. So let me ask you about that then. How do you handle uncertainty?
I become massively certain that I can.
So in that sense, you're seeking, or not even seeking, but you're expecting security within, I suppose, the unexpected.
There is no certainty in life. Case closed. Yeah, the only difference is the tree doesn't stand there worrying if it's going to get blown down by a storm tomorrow. It just deals with what shows up. So, for me, I love the level of uncertainty. It also allows me to go and play the game from a very different and unrestricted, platform. If I'm working for somebody I don't like in a job that I can't stand, doing meaningless stuff that I can't see makes a difference for something that by definition is being paid less than what I'm worth, then why would I want to spend any of my time doing that for the sake of having some menial illusion of certainty that I can pay my mortgage at the end of the month? Now, don't get me wrong. There is a whole class of people that's what they do love, which is great. I'm not saying if that's for you and that's your path and that's your truth, not to do it. But as for entrepreneurs, that isn't our truth. So for me, is it glamorous? Well, not really. Yes, I bought my first Ferrari for cash at 25. Yes, I bought my last McLaren for cash. And there's times where it's all crashed and burned and fallen apart, and I end up spending 6 months in jail. So it's all the ups and the downs. If you can't handle the climb to the top of the mountain, you don't deserve the view. And it's not about the view. It's people live in this tiny, narrow little bandwidth of life, and I'm all about the peaks and the troughs. I want this incredible movie of my life. And again, if you get to the end of a decent movie, Rob, and you want to walk out of the cinema thinking, wow, that was a movie that pushed every button, that squeezed every emotion out of me, I'd pay to see that again in a heartbeat. And every movie that like that, which is rare these days, has everything in it: comedy and drama and romance and tragedy and intrigue and surprises and twists and all of this stuff. That's the movie of your life that you want to live, not this narrow little safety zone, boring ass movie where, it's like James Bond rescuing a kitten out of a tree for 90 minutes. You wouldn't pay for that movie.
From that point of view, what is it that makes you tick today, would you say, Peter?
An absolute appreciation of this gift that we have called life and being born in a time in human history that our ancestors have dreamed about at every level. I broke up with stress a long time ago. I tried being unhappy once, see what it was like. Guess what? Didn't like it.
Yeah.
Right. So therefore, didn't do it again. And guys listening, don't complicate it. It can be that simple. If you want the secret of happiness, pretty simple. Think happy thoughts. And happy thoughts are always available regardless of what's going on in the outer world. And happiness is nothing more than a byproduct of thinking happy thoughts. You want to think, depressing thoughts, go be depressed. It's a choice. Where we get caught around the axle is when we have rules around what has to happen in order for us to give ourselves permission to think happy thoughts. And I hope you caught the specificity of that language pattern.
Go into that a little bit more for us, Peter. That's fascinating.
Yeah, as I say, it's not about your unwillingness to be happy. It's about the rules you have that say, I won't allow myself to feel happy unless, and then fill in the blank. The outer world pays me more money. My girlfriend, gives me more sex. My mother stops bitching about me. Whatever it is, we have these rules that we set up unconsciously, that if these rules aren't met, we will refuse to allow ourselves permission to feel the feelings that we could choose to feel at any particular time. And that's really where most people get screwed up. And so, on that basis, what are your rules around being happy? What are your rules around being stressed? Some people get stressed if they haven't got 3 months' money waiting for them at the end of in the bank account. Some people get stressed if they feel the economy is going to downturn. And this is all stuff that 90% of which you can't control, which is stupid, because now you're giving your happiness remote control to other people who don't have your happiness as their agenda.
I get that completely. What I really like about that is, in many respects, what you're talking about here is about taking responsibility, personal responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely, because without personal responsibility, you fall into the trap of blaming. And nowhere in the universe does blame give you any kind of return on investment that's that makes you feel better, right? Oh, it's their fault, right? Okay, you're avoiding responsibility. Well, that's going to come back and bite you. Oh, well, if it wasn't for my parents, then I wouldn't be this way. Well, I got news for you. No, it isn't. If you had a belief that says you chose your parents before you came here, maybe you'd try and have a slightly different viewpoint and think that they're here to learn something from them, or thank them for being a pretty tough personal trainer for you to be able to grow muscles that you can be able to help other people with that also didn't get the love or the idealistic childhood that you feel that you were somehow divinely right to deserve.
Yeah, I love that as well. It reminds me very much of the line of thinking, which is, in some respects, we are living our perfect lives.
You can't live anything else. In fact, I'll give you the example of a kitchen, right? If life is a perfectly stocked kitchen, you've got the pots, the pans, the ingredients, you've got the gas, you've got the oven. Most people are sitting there complaining that they're hungry. Yeah, they don't want to get off their ass and learn how to cook a souffle. They don't want to get off their ass and learn how to, and start making a pizza. Yeah. And for those that do, they don't understand that, if we're learning how to be better chefs here as better human beings, the game is set up to give us absolute perfect feedback because that's part of the rule set. Yeah. And with perfect feedback, you can work off that. If you oversalt the food, guess what? The food's going to taste salty. Great. I can work with that. Why? Because if I oversalted the food and it didn't taste salty, I'd be confused. I wouldn't know where to go. If I sat down one day and started earning loads of money without working, I'd be confused. But if I sit down and don't work and I don't earn money, I can work with that. That's called feedback. If I'm complaining and being in victim mode and blaming all the time and life seems to heap more crap on top of me, well, that's called feedback. I can work with that. Oh, guess what? When I start taking personal responsibility and adding value and concentrating on raising the significance of others rather than trying to get them to recognize my own, then at that point, life starts working for me. Oh, feedback. If I put the pizza in the oven too long, I get a burnt pizza. Well, guess what? Try turning the temperature down and not putting it in so long. It's the system works. We are living our perfect lives, whether we're hungry, starving, eating burnt food, or gourmet. The system is designed to give perfect feedback.
That's a great analogy. With your experience as a mentor, you've mentored many people directly and indirectly. Do you believe the reason that creative people get stuck when they're trying to launch their own businesses and implement their own ideas is because they're not taking enough action? Is that what you see, or what is it that you see when people are getting stuck?
One of the first things one needs to do, Rob, is to peel back the onion a little more because it's not about, a lot of the time, the surface level of activity.
Right.
And if somebody's not taking action, it's probably not because they're unintelligent enough to realize that they should be taking more action. It's probably because there's an unconscious fear there, or a conscious fear they're not willing to include or surrender or deal with, or process. So, a lot of the time, it's, virtually all of the time, it all comes back to some level of fear. Some people fear success. Some people saw, their parents, do well, and then all their neighbors started resenting them, and they, there's an unconscious connection there that says, oh, well, if I make more money, I'll lose all my friends. And that happened to me when I bought my Ferrari. I thought my friends would be happy, and I learned a big lesson. So if you understand that a lot of the time, the inaction part is just a symptom of something that is blocking that. It's very rare, especially in today's ubiquitous level of information, that it's down to a lack of understanding what to do next, because Siri will teach you how to build a business these days. I mean, come on. Right, so the information's out there. Why we don't apply it is usually the biggest issue, and that comes down to looking at our own unresolved issues of fear, self-sabotage, procrastination. Why is that? And so there's many different layers of the onion to peel back, and that's really where I would start. Starting with what's your outcome, what's your why are you doing this, and then who do you need to become in order to be the person that would execute that? What have you got to let go of? What other beliefs do you have to change? What current aspects of reality do not support you that were supporting you up to this point that you've got to shed, that you're also going to face fears with? That kind of stuff.
In the early days for you, Peter, when you gained the self-awareness and the realization that this was what was holding you back, what did you do? What was the action that you took?
No matter which way you slice it, there's always work to do. And the hardest thing a person can do, in my experience, a human being, is to look in the mirror, be honest, and be willing to do the work. We are trained as experts today in the art of distraction. And when it comes to distracting ourselves away from our own personal growth, that's why everybody's an expert at something that everybody else should be doing. Because it stops them looking in the mirror. And so having the self-honesty and the willingness to surrender fear, to put down as much of the ego as you can, and be open to being vulnerable and authentic is the starting point. And that's not easy. Most people in their teenage 20s can't do that because, in all fairness, they're not really designed for it. They've still got to bang their head on the pavement a few times in order to learn how to tie their shoelaces. That's just part of the feedback system. Nobody cooks a perfect pizza from day one.
Can you remember the moment where you first sought to mentor yourself?
Yes. I was 17. And I realized when I first came across personal growth, I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. I was listening to an old 6-tape cassette tape on some site. I don't. It was a seminar. I can't even remember the name of it. I really can't. I've tried for years to think what the first tapes were, but it wasn't. It was a typical personal growth kind of course, 6-tape cassette. And I remember listening to these little headphones over my head on this little pop-up tape recorder as I was sitting on my bed making notes. And I was like, whoa, hang on a minute. You mean there's an entire industry that teaches you personal success? Like, wow. I was like, well, where was that at school?
Yeah.
Because that's what I really wanted to learn. I didn't want to learn algebra and the periodic table. I wanted to learn how to become successful. And so when I realized there was an entire industry outside of traditional education and formal education where I could learn myself on my terms and no teacher was going to tell me what to do or how to hand in homework, I just dropped myself into that wholeheartedly. I read all the books, listened to all the tapes just over and over and over again, and started applying what I was learning. And guess what? It started making a big difference. Now, again, in my late teens, early 20s, a lot of what I was doing was covering up the insecurities or designed to try to prove to the world that I was actually good enough and please look at me because, now I've made it. And even though I never felt that I had. So, but that's just part of the journey of emotional maturity that, it takes time to go through. Again, you don't bake a cake in 2 nanoseconds. It takes time to rise. And it's the same with the ripening of the human experience.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I love the way you describe that in terms of that journey, our evolution, and the patience that we need with that in some respects.
With ourselves as well. A lot of people's favorite pastime is to beat themselves up and feel guilty about decisions that they've made that didn't turn out as well as they could. It's like, well, no. Yeah. Ask yourself, look at what I've learned, not look at what I've lost. It's a difference right there in one question between a life of possibility versus a life on antidepressants.
Absolutely. I was fascinated you mentioned education there, because with 2 young sons, I'm very much realizing that the education systems we've got today aren't going to last. And I can see that people are turning to podcasts and online learning. I'd love to learn more about your perspective in terms of, you were talking about your own early education there, listening to cassettes. How do you see education changing now, and where do you think it's going to go in the future?
Traditional education gets a pretty bad rap these days because it's evident that it's completely lagging behind the times. And I don't like to slag off traditional education as such, because when people understand that it's actually perfect for what it was designed for, it's just the fact that what it was designed for has no basis in 21st century reality. And traditional education was designed to take people that were essentially in a feudal system, planting crops in the field. And as the Industrial Revolution came in, we needed to now start to educate people as workers so that they could show up on time, be conformists, have zero creativity, because we didn't want somebody in front of us spinning Jenny thinking, I wonder what would happen if I press that button. And basically do as they're told, and be rank and file, so that the plutocrats, the industrialists, etc., could have some sense of certainty that they could build their factories and populate them without people getting hurt and production being affected. So traditional learn by rote, conformists, do as you're told, disciplinarian-based education was perfect for that phase of humanity's progression from planting crops to making steel. But that has absolutely zero impact for the greater good in today's world, where we desperately need creativity. We desperately need free thinking. We desperately need entrepreneurship. We desperately need solutions to global problems that are arising, and to breed in independence. And the challenge now, as you see with this form of schooling, is we're breeding a whole culture of snowflakes who have this kind of not sense of entitlement to, but more of a whole attitude that is manifesting in the words of, oh, I'm offended, right? We're building a culture of people that are easily offended. I got news for you, right? I don't care what I say if it offends you, if it's my truth, right? What we would rather do, rather than put people in bubble wrap and all this gender neutral crap, right? Why not teach people how to have a strong enough backbone and have so much self-assurance that no matter what somebody else came up and said to them, which they can't control, it wouldn't affect them. And they could own themselves at that level. Now I'm not advocating what's right or wrong in terms of the debate on either side of that, picking this gender issue as a relatively new phenomena. Right? What I'm saying is that if you give your power away to somebody to come up and call you what they have the right using their free will to be able to say, and you decide using your free will to take a disempowering meaning from that, stop blaming them.
That's a fresh perspective. I think it leans back towards, for me, the theme of ownership and responsibility in that sense. It's almost like owning your own power.
Exactly. I mean, who do you want to breed? Who would you want to be father of your children? Or your grandchildren? Some spineless person who's walking around with his radar up that could collapse and melt at any moment because somebody said something they didn't like, or somebody that has the power to own themselves and walk through a crowd and make the tough decisions that are required in today's kitchen of life in order to be able to grow to their potential, irrespective of all of the other people who they can't control, trying to do the same thing.
There's no doubt about it in my mind that you are passionate about positive change. What positive opportunities do you see in the world today compared to, say, your experience 20 years ago?
Oh, wow. I mean, for business owners or potential entrepreneurs, we're living in a time now that, again, 20 years ago, the barriers to entry are so low. I mean, I used to have to invest £1 million in CapEx to be able to create an infrastructure that you can now get something that's 10 times better for $5 a month on an app in your pocket. Right? There has never been a better time in human history to basically go out and add value to the world and live your truth and express your passion and gifts. It's just insane. So there are so many opportunities right now that more than any other time in history. It's not a lack of opportunity, it's a lack of courage to face the fears that are stopping you from availing the opportunities.
So there's no shortage on ideas here. It's courage we're perhaps short on sometimes.
Absolutely. And if we're breeding a generation of people that don't have courage but have, as I say, the ability to be offended rather than stand their ground with a backbone, I can't see them starting their own business anytime soon, unless they have a written guarantee from the government that they'll never lose money.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's one of my own personal ambitions that for both of my young sons that they'll start their own businesses by the time they're 12 or 13. So we'll see how that goes. One of the things that was going through my mind just then, and also when I introduced you before our chat, is how do you get it all done? I mean, from my point of view, looking again through what you've achieved and through your material, you're pretty prolific and you seem to have this continuous flow of creative output that's fascinating to follow. So I'd love to know a little bit about what your secret is to getting all of that stuff done. What do you have to have in place almost on a daily basis to reach your own goals?
Love that question. And I'm a great believer here, Rob, in setting yourself up to win. It's like if you've got to go to the gym tomorrow morning, don't put your gym kit in at the bottom of the wardrobe at the other end of the room. Put it at the foot of the bed or next to the bed, so it's the first thing you put on when you get out. That's called setting yourself up to win. Make your smoothie the night before and put it in the fridge. There's a lot of ways to be able to do that. Now, when it comes to engaging in a productive day, one of the first things that I tell people to do is to avoid time management, because time management is one of the biggest misnomers responsible for more stress than I've seen elsewhere. And I'll explain that because it's a little out of the ordinary and controversial. But time management, you can't manage time any more than you can manage a current of a river. If you try to manage time, what tends to happen is that you usually get better at being able to put more stuff on your plate. You actually find faster ways to get stressed. Most of the people that are super stressed, they've done time management, and they realize it's like, if you, for example, if I take the let's take the analogy in the 1960s and 50s when we were inventing all of these incredible labor-saving devices, that were saving us so much time in washing and drying and hair dryers and all of this kind of stuff and kitchen appliances. And the big question at the time when these were all coming out was, wow, in the future, what are we going to do with all of this leisure time? How's that working for you?
Yes.
Right? So it will fill up with other stuff. Right? So you don't change. You can't manage time, as I said, any more than you can manage the current of a river. Right? As soon as you try to manage time, you commoditize it. Or as soon as you have a belief that says, I don't have enough time, you commoditize it. And time isn't commoditizable. You can't go to Tesco's or Walmart and buy an extra 2 hours. It doesn't work that way. So instead, if you change your relationship to time, for example, most people's relationship to time is dysfunctional because, again, it's like, I don't have enough. Yeah, and you're commoditizing something that's impossible to commoditize. So therefore, you're already on the back foot and you're never going to win that game. But having a different belief that says time serves me and I can never run out of now shifts the game completely. And what are your most important things you want to focus on? Right now, today, I'm finishing off a webinar for my latest course, which I'm putting together. It's called the Stress Proof Professional. And I'm excited about putting this down. I'm putting several hours in here. And apart from this podcast today, my phone is off. I've had a one management call delegating out to my assistant. And I know that where I'm to spend my time for getting the biggest bang for my buck is on creating good content, delivering good content, and signing off on high-level budget and strategy. And everything else should be off my plate and delegated to somebody who loves to do the other stuff.
That's great. I love that aspect of time serves me. Again, it's that responsibility. It's taking ownership, and it's taking ownership of our own concept of time. Let me ask you this then. When you do anything in life, what do you put first? What would you say your highest priority is when you make any decision?
For me, that's quite an easy one because I have a structured list of values. I was once taught by one of my great business mentors, Peter Thomas, out of Canada, the founder of EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, founder of Century 21 for Canada. He's an amazing man, and recently had his 80th birthday. And I remember him telling me many years ago, he says, when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. And one of the things that I value more than anything right now is my connection to, I don't want to get, again, caught up in issues around labels here because the mind works off labels and labels are never the thing. That's not a tree. That's what we call a tree. You know what I mean? So if you have a label for, let's call it infinite intelligence. At the esoteric level, you'd call it the divine. Quantum physics would call it the field. Religion would call it God. Spirituality would call it source. I don't care what the label is. The travesty of humanity is we go to war and kill each other over whose label is right. So, for me, what is my connection to truth, and how do I get my signal to noise ratio to be as best as I can? And what I mean by that is that the brain is a lot of noise. The heart really is the signal. You can justify your way in and out of everything. In fact, the mind's job is to justify your thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors consistent with your default emotional state, which is why when the alarm goes off in the morning and you're tired, you'll always think of an excuse to press the snooze button. If you're in an angry state, you're going to find a reason why you shouldn't apologize. So that's the mind's job. So that's noise. Whereas the heart, it doesn't have access to the logic and reasoning, deduction, metaphors, and all of the tools the mind has to be able to win the argument through in a debate game. The heart just knows. It knows truth and not truth. Positive, negative, move towards, move away, engage, disengage. And so if you can quieten the mind and listen to your, you call it your truth, your gut feel, your intuition, again, labels, then at that point, I'll have a much closer decision on where I want to move forward. What's first for me? Is this in alignment with my truth? Is it not? Is this more serving my ego? Is it serving my insecurities? Am I avoiding it through fear? Or is this something that I really know I should do, and I've got to figure out a way to reconcile it because my heart's telling me and I can't not listen? Make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I have to say, just to hear that made this whole conversation absolutely worth it. So I love how you've put all that together. That's absolutely fascinating. So knowing everything you know now, Peter, in your life so far, if you could go back to a younger Peter and give him your best advice, what would it be?
How young?
Oh, let's go back to when you were 17.
Oh, okay. So the arrogant one. Okay. So 17, there's no fear. You think you know how the world works. You're exciting about sort of looking behind you on one shoulder where the whole academic side is, and forward to the whole journey of adulthood and moving out. And hey, in a few months' time, you're going to be legal to drink as well. Not that stops you before, but if I could reach out to that guy and actually get his attention, I would definitely tell him not to sweat the small stuff. To know that he's already good enough no matter what happens, that there's nothing to prove, that no matter what he's done, no matter what he's not done, he's worthy of love, and to go enjoy the ride. Don't take it so serious.
I like that. Yeah, don't take it so seriously. Lovely. So just a couple of quick fire questions then before we wrap up.
Shoot.
What's inspired you most recently?
That is a great question. I would say David Icke, would you believe?
Really? Yeah.
I got to have lunch and dinner with David a few weeks back where we were speaking at the same conference. And regardless of how you buy in or not to his philosophies, one thing that I was so inspired by was his commitment to speak his truth in absolute defiance of traditional society's wishes, judges, and heaps of sort of insults, and to be completely impervious to the good opinion of others. That was inspiring.
That's awesome. What are you grateful for today?
Where does the list begin? I mean, the starting point is actually being here in the game. I wake up every morning, I start the day with gratitude because I'm here, I'm still back. Clearly life wanted me to still be in the game because it brought me back from a different reality frame that we call dreaming, different data stream. Yeah. So now I'm back here in this game. Wow, what an opportunity. I mean, we're living in a time in history where it's impossible to starve to death in a modern country. We get to travel to different countries in hours. We get to communicate with people around the world that we've never met and influence instantaneously. We get the answer to any question we could possibly think of by asking it to a phone. I mean, guys, unbelievable. Take stock. This is such a time. You could have been born any time in the last 5,000 generations of human history. And trust me, if you pulled that card out of the deck, you'd want to put it back in and reshuffle till you got the ace that you're currently holding.
Yeah, right. So what's next for you, Peter? What are you working on right now? You mentioned your webinar there.
Yes, no, I'm very excited because my tribe, in my 20s, I was a typical burnt out, stressed out, borderline depressed, staring at the ceiling 3 o'clock in the morning, working 130 hours a week, couldn't shut my mind off, emotionally unavailable for the women I was with, and all desperately trying to prove to the world I was good enough or get to the level where I thought that would magically go away because I would have enough. And I think as most entrepreneurs tend to find out, that's just a Pollyanna level of reality that never materializes. So I saw and worked with so many people that were stressed out and was able to turn their lives around so quickly by shifting their inner world. So I decided to really commoditize and take that out to the masses of what is essentially my tribe, the entrepreneurs that are out there. And the Stress Proof Professional is about to be launched, and I'm really excited. It's basically a mixture of online learning and a group call each week with me that really takes you through a personal inner transformation so that if it comes to it, you could walk into prison and smile, losing everything, and walk out having changed the world. Not saying that that's going to be everybody's path, but what would happen if for many people right now, if the son came home and was arrested for having drugs, or they came back and their partner filed for divorce, or they got a stage 2 cancer diagnosis, or there's so many people don't know how to deal with adversity because they don't have the tool set and be able to handle that with grace and elegance to a point where they normally always come out better on the other side. So that's my passion right now, being able to put that together and take it to the world.
That's brilliant. And for our listener, where can they find out more about your latest work and, of course, yourself?
Stressproofprofessional.com is a holding page right now where we're just taking some connections and contacts for people that are interested in wanting to be part of that beta process so that we can roll that out. My work's all over YouTube, as you probably know. I try to put out a lot of content that's free for people to try and add as much value as I can. And petersage.com is always a source of inspiration as to what's going on with me and what's happening.
That's fantastic. Peter, thank you so much for your time today.
More than welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Nothing beats the stories and advice of an expert to help you raise your creative game. I would love to know what you thought about today's episode, so don't forget to subscribe in iTunes, where you can rate and review the show. If you like this episode, I invite you to share it on Facebook or Twitter with the one person you know who will benefit from the wisdom shared here today. You can find the show notes on inspirationalcreatives.com/podcast. If you have a burning question or a great idea for a guest, head on over to inspirationalcreatives.com/contact, where you can connect with me there.